Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is, for the second time, the Ventauri Pro Series, and it is, for the second time again, our social race on a wonderful Tuesday evening. We hop across mainland Europe. We were in Barcelona a fortnight ago. Now we go to Zandvoort in the Netherlands. And if the last 24 hours are anything to go by, penalties will be coming, and they'll probably be painful for quite a lot of people. Looking forward to this one. Got some different drivers on the grid. We've got the official lineups for most people that are here, of course, as well. And it should be a very exciting one as Luca Ripassa looks to go back-to-back in the two social races we are going to have. In Commentary Corner, I'm delighted to say, for the first time, alongside myself, Tom Wilson, Tom Squared has infiltrated yet another series. TK Tom Knight, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. And you're right, Tom Squared is basically taking over every single broadcast at this point. I wouldn't want it any other way, realistically. It's so good to be here. Of course, this will be our commentary lineup for the full season, as long as most of us are at Browns, as long as work doesn't call. And actually, we get a good look at our drivers today and see how they're going to fare up against one another.
Absolutely. It was a really interesting race a couple of weeks ago at Barcelona. Really exciting lead battle as well. We had some slight divergence in the strategies. It was the first time, realistically, that we've seen the battery management as well. That's going to come into play significantly, of course, around a circuit like Zandvoort also. But I think we should have a quick look at the driver lineup for this evening's action, because we've got some big hitters on the grid, haven't we, TK? Luca Rapassa's still there once again, draped in papaya, this time with Tudor Presscan alongside. And Gabor Chonstos had a really good run to fourth. And the runner-up was Jensen Rosen, who has switched allegiances from Alpine to Racing Bulls. But we have got a couple of esports drivers on the scene as well, maybe just to upset the apple cart ever so slightly.
We certainly do. A lot of them up and down the field, which will be really wanting to try and make an impression. The most notable, of course, is that Haas lineup. Joris Krozen and Julian Klaffenbach stepping in alongside one another, looking to make some really interesting moves. Marcel Paps as well, well known in the scene as one of the faster drivers, so he'll be a bit of a threat here this afternoon. And, you know, even when you look more in depth to some of the teams, the likes of Cameron Dowes, Luca Rapassa, you've got those development drivers in there already who I think could be making some waves.
Absolutely. Fabrizio Dono, so in there as well. Another driver we have to make sure we keep an eye on. Steven Vazzo as well was having a very good race 2 weeks ago before a little bit of a whoopsie coming out of turn 5, I believe it was. Lit up the rear tyres, threw himself into the wall with a bit of a blunder and ended his night early. But it's going to be a fascinating lineup. And from the drivers, we need to look at the tarmac that they'll be romping around for the first season, which is coming up in just under 3 weeks' time. As we start where we should do in Formula One, Albert Park in Australia. And then we blast around the globe across 14 weeks, I believe it is, with a couple of breaks in there. From China to Great Britain, Austria, the Steering Hills, Suzuka, Spa, Bahrain, Circuit of the Americas, and then Jeddah, Mexico. The hallowed Brazilian bitumen of Interlagos, and then Abu Dhabi to round things off in October. That feels like a hell of a long time in the future, but it is a great calendar. And what we've got, TK, is we've got lots of different circuits, which on this game in particular will test out lots of different facets of a driver's arsenal.
Absolutely, and you've got every individual element when it comes to racing that is going to be tested. And, you know, as you said, starting in Australia, ending in Brazil and Abu Dhabi, quite possibly the best way that you can actually see the season go. We go to the likes of, you know, your Suzukas, your Spa-Francorchamps, but then to COTA, which are all very different challenges from one another. And actually, I think over the course of the season, we are going to see drivers that will excel at one track and maybe struggle at another.
Because battery management is so important. And we look at some of the energy-starved circuits. We're looking at Australia, Silverstone, round 3, Austria, round 4. Both you and I will know that as of creator series that happened very recently. Spa as well is going to be a really interesting one. And then the more technical circuits. Jeddah's very interesting on this game with the reduced downforce compared to the ground effect era cars. COTA, like you mentioned. And I'm going to be interested to see how Mexico works as well. Recharging in the middle sector, but an incredibly long main straight. And there's going to be a lot of tactical battles going on there, I'm sure.
I think especially as you head through the stadium, we'll see a lot of drivers taking that almost slower than they traditionally would in the 25 regulations and even before that into the early 2020s, because they're going to have to recharge that battery to deploy it pretty much down that long back straight. We know already that you can get swallowed up if you haven't got battery in the traditional regulations. But now as we head into 26, where it's even more, I don't want to say diverse because I think that's the wrong word, but it's going to be a struggle if you're one that likes to burn the battery early on.
Yeah, and I think, like we mentioned, me and Nathan a couple of weeks ago, and as we've spoken about a few times already, It's a lot more about management in these 26 cars. A lot more the drivers have to think about, a lot more the drivers have to take into account and take stocks of as you go through a stint. You've got to be really, really careful with how your battery is. Wings don't necessarily matter too much anymore. Yes, we're going to be seeing, a lot of interesting wing setups because that's how the meta seems to look on the F1 26 DLC. But with the way the battery works, the lower wings, not necessarily the straight line speed advantage that we would have seen before. It's more about that battery harvesting and the regeneration of the energy that will cause the improved straight line speed. It's swings and roundabouts.
It really is, and it's something that I think we've discovered when we've come into these 2026 regulations where low wings were, for so many years, the meta to run. You wanted to get as much straight line speed as you could, and now you've got the manual overtake mode and the straight line mode and everything else in and amongst that. You don't have to worry too much about running low wings for the straight lines because you get it as part of the package now, and obviously you can then focus on having really high downforce to take, in theory, the cornering sections really quickly. Obviously, the battery management element has kind of killed that idea. I'd love to see V10s or V12s with straight line mode because I think we'd see some fantastic racing. You'd see the really fast cornering and actually really high revs as you go down the start-finish rate because they're not restricted by downforce as much.
It's a double-edged sword with these cars in particular because from a personal standpoint, I'm nowhere near as good as the people we're about to see take this on. I like the new handling model. I think it's nicer to drive. You've got a little bit more feel. The cars, you could definitely feel the reduction in weight, also the reduction in downforce as well. But because you're not racing flat out, qualifying in particular, we know that there's big issues in real life. Less so a problem in the game because we don't have the massive super clipping issues that we saw earlier on in the real life season around particularly Suzuka. It makes for a really interesting dynamic because you can throw the car around, then you have to also think about the battery, think about the tyres as well. It's a very interesting balancing act. And I think what that does is it just branches out all the different skill sets that all the drivers need to work on. And those guys that are going to be really well-rounded and might not have the outright pace might just bring them back into the equation a little bit more.
I think you're absolutely right. It's that jack of all trades that I think is really going to come into their own within these regulations. Of course, we're yet to see any of the major leagues really kick off their seasons, the likes of, your PSGLs, your WORs, and of course now with the Ventauri Pro Series, as I stumble over my words already, this is looking great for the rest of the evening. But it is certainly going to be a one that I think there might be different drivers that really do excel, let alone when we get to F1 Esports or F1 Sim Racing in, about 9 months' time. There is so much to play for. And speaking of things to play for, Tom, we're about to get into qualifying.
Excellent news. Excellent news. Around a circuit like Zandvoort, we'll have a little bit of a chat about the Dutch Grand Prix circuit very shortly. But there we are, 22 cars. Second time I've been able to say that now in the pit lane as we all get ready to go short qualifying session in the offing with a 50% race coming up. A couple of things that we do need to make clear as well. Weather set to dry. There is, as a lot of people will know, a little bit of an issue with hot lap mode in the wet. Some people get it, some people don't. Completely random. Excellent feature there. And also no safety car turned on as well. So if you get called out on lap 1, you're going to be having a long old evening.
You are, unfortunately. There has been a slight change, though, which is probably the best way we can look at it, as I've just realised the track map's being covered by the Emily. Something we can fix in post. Absolutely no trouble. But previously, when the DLC first came out, drivers were losing overtake mode because of yellow flags. EA, in their most recent patch, have removed that. So you no longer lose overtake mode in qualifying if you go through a yellow flag zone, as Tamas Gal already getting disqualified for driving the wrong way. And I've got a lot of questions here, Tamas.
Well, we did have this last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say. I think we had 5 or 6 drivers disqualify themselves wanting to start from the back, having a bit of a run through. Obviously, this is a social race. This is not the start of the main season proper. So happy to start from the back and go for some interesting battles. And that contributed to what was a very exciting race. So as we look at the Alpine of Steven Vaza coming through the chicane at the start of the final sector, what are the real technical challenges that we're going to be looking at around this kind of circuit, TK?
It's a real tough one because you have the really high flow sections that is Sector 1. You then head into Sector 2 through turns 7, 8, 9 and 10. Where you want to try and take as much curb as you possibly can, but the moment you kind of mount the curbing, the car goes skateboarding and off into the barrier for a quick visit off to the medical centre. There are only as well 2 straight line mode deployments, and the run down towards turn 11 and of course the run down towards the first corner there are noted. by the purple sectors on the track map on the right-hand side, and the overtake detection point in a fairly standard place, being at the the entries turn 13, with the overtake mode available traditionally where the DRS used to be available, and now the straight line mode isn't available all the way into the exit of 14, so you're losing some ability to get that rear wing open right from the very offset.
Battery management's going to be interesting as well, because there's not that many long and or heavy braking zones for drivers to really lift off. Yes, there's a lot of half throttle corners in the middle sector, but they're high speed short corners as well, so the balance between trying to lift off, trying to use the half throttle technique as well, that's going to be fascinating to see as we watch the Papaya McLaren of Tudor Pressacan throwing it, hurling that car through turns 8 and 9 into the chicane of 11 and 12. Bohm just in front. Vaza will be the first to set a flying lap in qualifying in the Enstone-based Alpine car around the final corner with that beautiful Cadillac of Conrad Bohm. 9 flat is the benchmark for Steven Vazo. Do we get in the 8s with Bohm? Not quite, but we do go even faster. 9.030, and Tudor Pressacan slots just in between, 27 milliseconds separating the first 3 times.
Certainly looking close. Tycho Hardy as well, looking to make waves. Purple in the second sector was originally, until Steven Vasso stole it up towards the line. Only 5th fastest on this occasion. Alex Santana as well, looking fast in the first. He's gone purple in the opening sector, 23.747 for the Red Bull Racing outfit. We'll have to keep an eye on that second sector split. It's only a personal best, a 24.3, in line with what the top 4 are doing so far.
Short lap time, sub 70 seconds. We're going to see a very condensed field here. Luca Rapassa and Tom Roberts, 12.4 and 12.6 respectively. Cameron Dowes with a 16.5 as well. Backing off going again. Maybe a warm-up lap in the offing as well, as Victor Valder through the penultimate corner. Got to be really careful of the sausage curb. Aggressive serrated sausage curb on the outside that can drag you into the barrier. And we still don't get below the 69-second barrier. Victor Wilder fastest now by 0.02 of a second, but 10 milliseconds away.
Certainly so. We also had, I believe, another car come across the line. That would be, I think it was Jensen. It was indeed going into 9th fastest position for the FVR outfit. We've got a couple of other drivers. Gabor as well, one of those, making their way into turn 1 to start what will be their first flying run of the afternoon. I think we are going to get in towards the 18s to see what they can try and put down. Of course, we have seen for the very first time a driver with the BBE tag on their name. Obviously, I'd say a lesser known team within the F1 sim racing space, but I can't remember what that stands for. Will Gibson probably might know.
Well, yeah, Scott Holmes repping that tag, starting from the back of the grid, along with Tamas Gout and Fabrizio Donoso, who's also called a day in qualifying early. Almost a third of the way through the session already, as Gabor Chonstos making their way through turn 10 now. A little bit bumpy ride there of the curb on the outside. Feels like an age before we can plant the loud pedal. 48.1 through the first couple of sets. We're expecting to see Gabor right at the sharp end, although the back just kicking out once and twice on the exit of 12.
He was purple in the first, not necessarily the second, and really just the overcorrections you're seeing through 13 and 14. I think that is going to lose them out, unfortunately, and down towards the line. What can Gabor do? It's only 11th fastest. Clarification as well from Will Gibson. And of course, why am I not surprised? It is Brexit Ballers Esports.
Absolutely. What an absolutely one. Banned from PSGL for not being serious enough. I mean, I might have to say they're going to be my... Well, I don't think I can. I was going to say they're going to be my favourite esports tab, but the fact that it's Brexit Ballers Esports, I don't think we can support that one.
I think the jury's still out. We'll watch on board, though, with Elia Tomastello making their way through the final corner. They're purple in the second. They were looking relatively on pace in the first. They'll cross the line. It's only 12th fastest. They did not find the time they needed in that final sector. They're actually about 0.2 off the pace compared to everybody else around them, and that was pretty much what they are lacking in terms of looking for that top spot. Marcel Paps as well up in 6th place on a cooldown lap by the looks of things, or at least a double out lap, I think is the way they're looking at this.
Yeah, and you can see how tightly congested things are already. Top 7 all on the 9 flats. Not too many drivers detached at the back. Gabor Chonstos we saw working the rear tyres very hard through the middle and final sectors, overheating them to quite some tune, as here's Julian Klaffenburg. I think going again, though, looks a little bit down on that one. The 2 Haas cars currently occupying 7th and 8th, with Joris Krozen just behind on a 109.1. 1 millisecond faster than Tycho Hardy with Cameron Dowds. Improvement in the first sector, having to deal with quite a bit of traffic here, though.
Certainly so. And Luca Rapazzi getting caught up in this as well, who has invalidated on their run. And I wonder if they're trying to push the Ferrari as far forward as they possibly can. The V-Carb getting in all sorts of trouble. That's Tom Roberts. And you see a car in front going slowly, incredibly slowly, in fact. And has anyone told them this is, in fact, qualifying and not quite the race yet? Because they are trying to knock 10 bells out of one another.
Oh, superb battle. I thought Rapazzi was going to absolutely clatter into the Ferrari. Now down the inside, into the penultimate corner we fly. Neither of these drivers have a competitive time on the board. Same for Tom Roberts as well, as they're going to go line astern out of the final corner. Straight line mode is activated. Nose to tail up to the line. No improvement for Dow's big squeeze over to the wall. Here's some racing action in qualifying. Bit of a tap at the back of the McLaren. And Cameron Dow's still looking for a bit of space.
I'm not sure what the stewards might be saying about this one. I appreciate it's still a social race, but not a great showing from either of the two drivers at the moment. I'm confused as to where this goes. Stephen Vasso, though, does go fastest. First driver to break into the 108 with a 108.990, keeping it really nice and neat, actually, are the top three. All of them exactly with zeros at the end of their laps. I like that. That's tickling a part of my brain.
Dimitri, Tudor Presscam was out there. I don't believe improved. Just crossed the line. Still there in fourth. Make that fifth as Florian Vanzelter lowers the benchmark by a further 7 thousandths of a second. Still in the 108.9s, just ahead of Steven Vaso. Ferrari from Alpine, and then Victor Varda, Conrad Bohm back on the circuit as well in the Cadillac.
Absolutely. We'll see what they're able to try and put together. Interesting to note here from Florian. Not a single purple sector attributed to that lap time. So it was all just personal best, and that shows that consistency across a sector now, or across, all three sectors, is much more valuable than going fastest in any single one. Same with Tycho Hardy, who's improved on Florian's lap by about 19 thousandths of a second. Again, it's just personal best. It's not a fastest sector in any of the three.
Just chipping away at that benchmark time as we reach the halfway point in qualifying. Audi currently leading the way. Conrad Bohm up by a third of a tenth through sector one. Can the Cadillac continue to extract those tiny microseconds of performance? A 10th found in the first couple of sectors. This could be challenging for provisional pole position. Keeps it really tight through turn number 12. Plants the loud pedal out of it. Just a couple of corners left to negotiate. One significantly harder than the other. Throw the coil through turn number 13. Bury the loud pedal through the bank turn number 14. Maybe a distant slipstream from the Williams, I think, in front, but Bohm does lower it by another 200ths of a second. Wasn't a personal best in the final sector, but won't care one jot about it.
Absolutely stunning, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Try and find yourself at the top of that timing tower. More cars making their way up towards the line as well. We've got Cameron Dowers, who's almost certainly on a cool-down lap here at the moment. Victor Varda making their way through the first sector. One of the other cars as well, the other Audi-branded car just slightly further forward. Of course, Tycho Hardy making their way in towards pit road. Nelson Alves for Team Williams, not finding an improvement through the first, but might find some in the second. What can Jensen do? They are finding time through the second sector, nearly a tenth and some change.
Might need a little bit more, though. Down in 14th on a 9.3. With how congested it is in the real low 1 minute 9s, high 1 minute 8s, Jensen needs to find a little bit more time. Improves by a quarter of a second up to P8, but still only in the 9-0 club. Marcel Pats, big improvement through the first sector as well. Nearly a tenth and a half found.
Certainly. So this is the tricky section, though. It's hard to tell if they're backing off or just doing a little bit of Lyco. Traditionally a place where you want to just try and slam the throttle and hope the car turns in and responds the way you want. Now you can charge so much battery through that section of the circuit. It's a bit of a double entendre in many aspects of the word, and in towards what will be turns 11 and 12, attacking those curbs like it owes them money.
Not a personal best, but still very much in the ballpark of where you need to be. Maybe extract a little bit more from the final couple of corners with Marcel Pass. The Aston Martin, which is absolutely terrible in real life, could be pulling gears up to the line to try and take provisional pole away from Conrad Bohm. Aston Martin and Cadillac battling at the back in IRL. It's P4 for Marcel Pass, another drive to dip their toes into the 108s.
Certainly stunning. Another purple sector, according to the game for Gabor. But again, it's not even a personal best for him. I love that the game tells us it's purple. And in fact, it's not even improving on their personal best. They head through the first sector for the Mercedes-AMG Petronas cars, heading through turn 10 and on to the first of the straight line mode detection points on this circuit. Both front and rear wings open and attacking that curb of turn 11s and turns 12. Finding, again, not an improvement in the second, not finding time where they'd like to.
Really struggling for grip. The back of that Mercedes looks very, very loose indeed. Saw it to some tune on the first fire lap that Gabor attempted. Down by 9 milliseconds through Sector 1 and Sector 2. Should find some time in the final sector, but still only down in P12 on a 109.1.
Heartbreak, I think, is probably the name of the game. Keep an eye on Comrade. They've just dropped into the pits, as the game told me. They set a purple first sector. Never believe anything with your own eye. Julian Clafenbach goes fastest by just over 8 thousandths of a second, but we have to keep an eye as well on Stephen Vasso. They're finding time. Purple in the middle sector. Personal best in the first. Up towards the line for the team based in Enstone. Goes fastest. A 899, just dipping their toes into the 108.8s.
Feels like we're doing the Mondo Duplantis, just continually increasing or lowering the benchmark in this case by the smallest of supplements of time that we can find, the smallest increments up and down. First driver into the 108.8, albeit only by 1/1000th of a second. Joris Krozen, I think, finding an improvement there to P13 on a 109.1. As we're watching Cameron Dowd still at the back of the pack, hasn't disqualified themselves just yet. Luca Rapassa and Tom Roberts, both of them still yet to get a competitive time on the board as the Ferrari returns to the pits. Here's Tycho Hardy out there again, 4 milliseconds found in Sector 1, but losing time in the middle sector.
Sorry, jumping back on with Florian there, purple in the second, personal best in the first as well, goes fastest, 108.852, bringing it back to the Scuderia Ferrari-based outfit with just over 4.5 minutes. Cameron Dowd retiring from the session. We'll make that 5 retirees with Luca Rapassa also retiring. Interesting to see. But you mentioned earlier that we're just knocking the most minimal of times off of these top splits, the top times. And I treat it much like digging for artifacts. You just want to take enough away to reveal that gold-plated piece of art, but not enough where you're going to destroy it. And, that's how I describe it.
Improvement for Pressacan, up to P3 in the lead, McLaren, 108.9. Are we going to get in the 7s? That improvement for Fanzelter over Vaso. That's the biggest leap we've had for quite some time. 400ths of a second, nearly half a tenth, separating the top two as things stand. One of the biggest gaps, if not the biggest gap, separating two cars from first down to, 14th with Gabor Johnstos. Then you get a tenth and a bit back to Nelson Alves in the Williams. Grozen back to the pits, up to P7 into the 108. Here is your provisional pole sitter with just under 4 minutes to go. Presscan has just gone P3. Tycho Hardy didn't find an improvement earlier on, still P6 in the Alpine. Almost everybody back in the garage as Conrad Bohm in that Cadillac is the first to reappear.
Certainly so. With 3.5 minutes and a little bit of change left on our timekeeper's clock, they'll be getting themselves out, getting the tyres prepped appropriately and wanting to go for another final run. Tom Roberts also retiring from the session, which is an interesting look when we've got qualifying. We've still got 3.5 minutes left. They're not even ego retires at this point. I'm curious as to where this is going. Maybe they've been banned from qualifying as not being full-time drivers, but a couple of them are. So maybe I'm chatting squirrel.
I think it's just drivers wanting to start from the back, wanting to have a bit of fun. Social race, remember, get a bit of overtaking going on, not as serious as the full championship that is starting in a few weeks' time will be, of course, and trying to put on a bit of a show for us in the second of our social races. Barcelona a couple of weeks ago, that was won by Luca Rapassa, who will be starting from the back in P17. Along with Tom Roberts, Cameron Dowd, Fabrizio Donoso, Scott Holmes and Tamas Gal. Conrad Bohm at one stage was the provisional pole sitter, down by 3 milliseconds in the first sector. Needs to try and extract a little bit more performance out of that Cadillac. Will this car be fueled up for maybe a couple of laps, since we've still got 2.5 minutes to go? Back of the car stepping out of the exit at 9.
That was tough. That was a really tough one to watch, just wanting to try and throw the car as quick as they possibly could. And you're right, the rear end just not playing ball with them this afternoon. Zach Clark in the chat saying they are choosing to start from the rear of the grid. A few people do that in the social races. Interesting stuff. We'll see how that fares for them. Of course, gives them maybe a little bit of data as well as they head into seasons proper. Gives them that ability to maybe go for an alternate strategy for the most part on those races. But Conrad Bohm almost certainly committed to that second run now. Won't have enough time. Well, probably might just have enough time to go for another emergency run should they need it, but whether the tyres and or the fuel are up to it will remain to be seen.
Yeah, starting from the back as well, also a good way to test out and learn a little bit more about the racecraft, how the battery games will work on this game. You don't necessarily have to go for the big old dive bombs that we've seen previously. You can get a little bit impatient, don't necessarily just want to be stuck in what are no longer DRS trains, they're more like battery trains now with the overtake boost mode you get for being inside one sector. Simon Engel down by half a tenth through sector 1, currently P11 in the lead. Williams. Steven Vaso out on a lap as well, I believe just behind this Williams on the road coming through turn 8. You can just see the flash of blue and pink there. Yes, and Steven Vaso actually backing out of that one.
Yeah, grass on the tyres, and that indicates to me they've taken an excursion off of the tarmac here on the circuit. Purple and game for Simon Engel, but only a personal best according to the telemetry. And through turns 12 and in towards the final 2, they'll run, see if they can improve. With just under a minute left in the timekeeper's clock, they have got time for one more. Should they have the fuel for it? That'll be the question on everybody's mind, but up towards the line goes the Williams car. Can they find improvement? They can, but it's not enough to jump them up an additional position.
Will we get to the 7s? The question that still needs to be asked. Florian Fanzelter still down in the first sector. No improvement, but pretty much matching it blow for blow. 3 milliseconds off the personal best. The big guns are out there on their flying laps as well. Klaffenbach, Krozen and Bison still need to get round to start their final lap. Here is Victor Valder through sectors 1 and 2, up by a tenth of a second. The smallest of margins as an improvement is going to find you maybe 3, 4, 5, even 6 places with how congested things are. From first down to 12th, they're separated by a tenth and a half. The DRS, or the straight line mode, I should say, opens for the Alpine. Improvement for Jensen Rose and P7. No improvement for the Alpine, but Florian Fanzelter is up by half a tenth.
Purple in the middle sector as well for our current provisional pole sitter, looking to make an improvement, does make an improvement, 37 thousandths of a second, a 108.815 is the fastest time to be the first driver to cross the line on the checkered flag. Tudor Prescan cannot find an improvement, can Steven Vaso. They're finding 2 thousandths through the first sector, make that 32 thousandths through the second.
This is going to be incredibly tight. Florian Fanzelter with the benchmark for everybody to chase. Tycho Hardy in the Alpine up to P7, 108.9. Gabor Chonstos finishes 108.9 in P11. Elia Tomasetto, P15 done as well on a 9 flat. What can Steven Vaso do? Pulling gears up to the line. We do go faster by 4 milliseconds. Provisional pole handed from Ferrari to Alpine as Joris Krozen up to P4 on an 8.9.
Klaffenbach's going faster as well through the second, up towards the line. Can they find good time in the third? They do not find improvement. Nearly a second down. I wonder what happened there. That is going to be disaster for themselves. Marcel Paps, their teammate, Lucas Bessiner, down in 14th place, comes across the line. The Rebel Racing outfit of Alex Santana swooping past, and that looks like an Aston Martin stranded just past the line. If that's what it looked like to me anyway.
It looked like a flash of green just sideways across the line. There goes Florian again, missing out on pole position. Held it for the last 5 minutes or so, losing it in the end to Steven Vaso by 4 1,000ths of a second. Marcel Paps is going to cruise through the final couple of corners to confirm a P7 starting position on the grid. The top 3, the only drivers to get into the 108.8s. We don't get into the 7s, but as we expected around a circuit like this, with a grid as competitive as this, incredibly competitive.
Certainly, and really sets up what is going to be a fantastic season, I believe, because of course if we're seeing good competitive times here, that is one that we will keep an eye out for. This driver's saying who's broken all the markers around the board, so maybe, I don't want to say team games being played, but maybe some shenanigans afoot from a few drivers as well.
A little bit of games going on already, mind games going on, heading into the race, which of course, as we mentioned earlier, is a 50% race. That should be 36 laps around this circuit. In the F125 cars, was a little bit touch and go. Finite balance between the 1 and the 2 stop race as to which was going to be faster, depending on how your pace was, of course. I'm going to be interested to see what strategy we go for here, considering the soft tyres are more competitive, but probably will still be a medium and hard tyre combo. But Steven Vaso on pole for Alpine, ahead of Florian Fanzelter, Tudor Prescan, Joris Krozen, ahead of their teammate Julian Klaffenbach, Conrad Bohm, Marcel Pass, Tycho Hardy, Jensen Rosen, and Alex Santana, your top 10. Gabor Chonstos just behind, Victor Valder, Simon Bengel, Lucas Beisner, Elia Tomasetto, Nelson Alves, and then Luca Passa, Tom Roberts, Cameron Dowles didn't set representative times. Fabrizio Donoso, Scott Holmes, and Thomas Gal did not head out at all, apart from Gal, who got disqualified.
Certainly looking like one that would be interesting. Now, traditionally, if you are watching this and getting ready for season proper, we'd be having a little bit of a break. We've even got a little board for it. I'll show it for you briefly. Don't go anywhere. So normally we'd be seeing that, but we're not today because it's a social race. We're going straight into it. Drivers don't need rest anyway, do they?
No. Throw them in at the deep end. We don't need time to reassess. Means they don't get all their soft compound tyres handed back to them as well. If we need them, unlikely safety cars off. Someone might go for the strategy. I think one person did start on the softs 2 weeks ago. Was very impressive in the early stages before falling off an absolute cliff, going down a rocky escarpment very, very quickly and quite uncomfortably as well. I don't know if we've got formation lap on.
I don't believe
I would
so.
expect probably not, because that's another thing that's a little bit dodgy.
We will wait. I think I was looking. I think it is off. Like safety cars are off as well. That's worth talking about very quickly. They won't have the safety and security and that safety net that comes with the full course yellows.
Yeah. And it means as well, you can't base your strategy around that safety car, which I don't think any of these guys do, considering it's a 50% race. Realistically, we're going to be going for that fairly linear strategy, starting on the mediums, going to the hards, or vice versa. We saw it work pretty well for Tudor Presscan last week, went for the alternate strategy. Are we going light? So yes, we will. So short run down to Tarzan. Kick off the second social race in the Ventauri Pro Series. Lights out and we are racing for the Dutch Grand Prix. Steven Vazo on pole ahead of Florian Fanzeld. A really good start from Joris Kroos and the Ferrari. Almost left standing in the starting blocks. Diving around the outside goes Tudor Presscan. The Ferrari getting it from absolutely all angles, dealing with the two Haas cars coming out of turn one. Vazo is clear. Fanzeld falling backwards by the second. Through goes Pabst as well. Terrible start. Given a bump up from the back from Jensen Rosen. Also getting it from absolutely everywhere.
The Ferrari, though, falling down the order. Florian has not had the best of starts, dropped down to 12th place. And even further now as they continue to run through turns 7, 8 and 9. 4 wide, I thought I saw back there. For the briefest moments, that Ferrari, something must be wrong because they can't seem to find any traction. Surely all the way down. Tamas Gal is down and out at the exit of turn 8. They're gone.
And that is a game crash as well for Florian Fanzelder. That is why they're so slow. The AI driving around there in second gear. Must have been as we were waiting for the lights to come on. Steven Vazo still leading the way there. Now Tudor Presscan ahead of the two Haas cars. Kroos and Klaffenborg and Marcel Paps, your top 5. Good start for Jensen Rosen into P6. We saw them giving the AI of Fanzelter a bit of a tap going through the bank turn number 3. The two Ferraris not having a good day. Neither for 2 weeks ago's winner. Luca Rapassa won the first social race down in 21st and a little bit detached at the back of the pack, battling through the long bank turn 14, almost up against the barrier there, Scott Holmes, as Cameron Dowles was on the inside and Tom Roberts trying to get involved too.
Gabor and Jensen going at it as well through the opening few corners. The Mercedes getting the better of the Visa Cash App Racing Bull Elia leaving the session. Unfortunately, Scott Holmes and Cameron Dowles continuing to battle out further down as a Victor Valdo and Elia, the Red Bull racing car, finding traction, or should I say struggling to find traction at the exit of 4, 5 and 6. And again, everyone's just got to settle their nerves at the moment. They're all a little bit jumpy after going straight from qualifying into the race. If they're able to sort those nerves out, we are going to see some fantastic racing.
Tomasetto, the second disconnection of the race down to P16 in the Red Bull racing car, passed by Varda, passed by Fabrizio Donoso, who's moved up from the back of the grid to P15, watching the other Cadillac of Conrad Bohm, who hasn't had the best of starts, was caught up in the kerfuffle in the skirmishes behind a very slow Ferrari AI of Florian Fanzelt, who I don't believe is back in the session yet either. Let's try and find the traction out of turn number 12 and into 13, which is a very critical corner. Slippery curb on the inside. If you put too much of your car over that curb, it will unsettle it, as it will on the outside with the serrated curb on the left that will hook you, Tony Hawk you into the barrier, as that is Tomasetta going further down the field. Holmes is through, Dowds will come through as well, as will Tom Roberts. You would imagine the AI will go defensive, but surely lunging it around the outside. Bit jinky there from the Red Bull, but Tom Roberts does cruise through.
Easy. When you're trying to race against an AI, these drivers know how to compete at the top levels of F1 sim racing, and really this afternoon we're seeing that on display. Tamas Gal leaving the session after their unfortunate crash out slightly earlier on. We see Conrad Bohm trying to make moves on Tycho Hardy for an 8th place on the circuit. This is making their way through turn 8 as well. And we'll just have a reminder of how the tyres are. We haven't actually mentioned this over the course of the race so far. Everybody on the mediums, except for one driver, that is Elia Tomasetto, who is no longer in the session as it stands at present.
Nibble down the inside of turn 10 there for Alex Santana, battling away with the Williams of Simon Engel. Does Santana think about it? No, we don't. Into the turn 11-12 chicane, taking a lot of curb though on the inside, bouncing over it. Bit of a tail snap for Engel in front. Got to be careful you don't lose too much time. Don't want to cook those rear tyres after only a handful of laps as well. Remember, inside 1 second, you get the extra blue overtake boost mode that you can use to your advantage throughout the course of the lap. As we start number 4, still with Vazo out in front. Engel's going to have to go defensive here, hovering in the middle of the circuit. Santana looking this way and that, trying to find the space. Getting a little bit balked though at the apex of Tarzan behind the Williams.
Certainly so. We watch from the rear wing of Engel in towards what is turn 3 of this circuit, waiting for that Red Bull to potentially try and send a move down the inside, but at present not wanting to do so. They've got the likes of Nelson Alves and Lucas Basina for company as well in 12th and 13th respectively. And the more battling these guys do, the more time they're losing up to Conrad Bohm just in front of the Red Bull racing car. Now right on the back of the gearbox, they make their way through turns 8 and turns 9 and wanting to try and open up a move potentially in towards turn 11 here. That's probably the next key overtaking spot, but it needs traction out of 10.
The Venturi drivers, VNT drivers battling over 10th and 11th. No biases from our side, we are sure. And look at that, Nelson Alves very close to the back of Santana as well into the 11th, 12th chicane. Bit of a wobble though for the second Williams, tucked right up underneath the rear wing of the Red Bull car. Got to be careful they don't lose touch to Conrad Bohm in front. That gap hovering around 0.8 of a second. But the lead for the first time looks like it's going to change hands and does. Comfortably to the inside, a little bit of battery potentially as well for Tudor Pressacan. Take it away from the pulse to Stephen Vaza.
Certainly McLaren back onto the top spot then as we head on to lap 5 of 36, approaching a 1/6 race distance already, which seems like it has gone by ever so quickly, and the batteries are going to be an important discussion point. We look about 50% battery on board with Stephen Varso, a very similar situation, probably closer to 35 to 40 on board with Tudor Pressacan, but at the present they are maybe potentially just working together, both Veloce Academy drivers of course.
Joris Krozen cruised up to the back of this duo as well. Julian Klaffenburg still P4 ahead of Marcel Paps. Gabor Chonstos P6 in that Mercedes ahead of Jensen Rosen, then Tycho Hardy, Conrad Bohm, and still Simon Engel holding on to that final spot inside the top 10 ahead of Alex Santana. This is Victor Valder. Was at one stage right at the sharp end in qualifying, got bumped down in the latter stages, currently holding P14, has Fabrizio Donoso to deal with, but they've got a little bit of breathing space behind. 2 seconds to the Alpine of Scott Holmes, who still has Cameron Dowds, Tom Roberts and Luca Repassa for company, as they found themselves battling quite a lot in qualifying. So they're going to be used to that company.
It's interesting. I might be wrong in saying this. TC is Thibaut Courtard Esports, if I remember correctly. I might have got that completely wrong. But it's interesting to see the names in those drivers starting to get involved in these bigger events and starting to get involved in the world of F1 sim racing. I'd love to see the team come in and enter as a challenger inside of F1 sim racing, should the likes of Audi or maybe Cadillac not put in an official challenger for the 2027 season. I'd love to see a team like Thibaut Courtard Esports come in and create one of the 10th or 11th teams.
Some superb drivers. Some of them, like you said, on show here. The highest place of them being Marcel Paps in position number 5. Joris Krozen sternly examining the rear geometry of the pole sitter Stephen Vazo's Alpine through turns 7, 8, 9 and 10. As they will open the active aero down towards the 11, 12 chicane. Still very close to the back of Vazo. Krozen looking a little bit racy here, but Vazo seeming fairly happy at this stage to let Tudor Pressacan run the race out in front as the chariot right at the head of the snake.
Certainly so, and we've started to get into that element of the race now where things have settled down a little bit, haven't they? We wait for those first round of pit stops, which will come probably quickly rather than later, roughly around, I'd say, early 20s, or late teens, early 20s is probably roughly when we'd expect those to start coming into contention. And as we make our way through, a little bit wide from Joris Krozen. Nope, that's a bit of lag. That's lovely. That's always fun.
Bit of desyncing, throwing the kitchen sink at the desyncing. We did see the other Haas under a bit of pressure though. Marcel Paps very close to the back of Klaffenburg coming out of turn number 1. Bit of a slide for Klaffenburg on the power coming out of the first corner of the lap. Tarzan, of course, gave Marcel Paps maybe the smallest of looks to the inside of turn number 2, which is not quite flat, just have to lift off ever so slightly, but it is high-speed corner that you have to be really committed to. Going defensive is Santana, still in this Williams sandwich, under pressure from Alves, still trying to look for a way past Engel, diving to the inside of turn 10, spotting a gap to the left-hand side that Alves, they're going to try and slide that Williams through, both of them a little bit wobbly on exit, wheel hooking as well. Lucas Beisner looking as the potential to try and pick up the pieces into the 11-12 chicane. It's Alves on the left-hand side trying to cut back as Santana to the inside, late on the brakes into the chicane. Crucially in front, Simon Engel really on the bubble of falling out of 1 second to Conrad Bohm in front, but it looks like we will remain, at least for the next 5 seconds, as we were.
Marcel Paps into the pits then, the first of our drivers, as well as Victor Valder also joining him in pit road. The battle there between Alves and Santana, whilst it was picture perfect and looked really good for the cameras, all they've done is throw away that overtake mode on the back of Simon Engel and want to try and hold on to that. They need to hold on to that best they can. And this is where battling, I think, in the 2026 regulations really start to damage a few of the drivers.
And it can be a little bit more tactical as well, because DRS, what's the debate? Is DRS more powerful or less powerful than the overtake boost that we've got? We can have that argument. If you use your battery, try and battle with someone to make them fall out of the 1 second, they lose the overtake mode rather than the DRS in the 25 cars. What's going to be the bigger difference to the lap time? We'll have to wait and see how that one unfolds. But Simon Engel definitely now falling out of the 1 second window to Bohm in front. And you would expect that Williams to be a little bit more vulnerable as we cross the start-finish line in a few moments' time to start lap number 9, with Judah Prescan still leading the way. But will anyone react to the punches pulled by Marcel Pabst and by Victor Valder on the previous tour?
Certainly so. We'll wait and see where those drivers that have made their early pit stops, both of them onto the hot compounded tyre. We see more drivers now. Conrad Bohm, one of them, into pit road. Alex Santana, another one of those drivers that have decided to enter into pits. Luca Rapassa, Cameron Dowes, Tom Roberts, all of those drivers, and it's a 10-second penalty for Cameron Dowes for speeding in pit lane, which is going to be rather damaging. But fear not, it's something that I believe both Alpine drivers did last season in PSGL PCF1. It was a blight on what was almost a perfect season for them.
Absolutely. Easily done around a circuit like this as well, where it is a short pit lane entry. Yes, you've got the little kink to slow yourself down, but you're coming in at some speed off the banking, powering it off the banking of turn number 14. So Marcel Pabst, 13th, has managed to put a lovely little undercut on Conrad Bohm, was ahead by a couple of positions in that lead train, now nearly 3.5 seconds clear of the Cadillac. Victor Valder 2 seconds ahead of Alex Santana. Then comes Luca Rapassa and Cameron Dowds with that 10-second speeding in the pit lane penalty. Jensen Rosen falling out of 1 second of Gabor Chonstos also, so under a little bit of pressure perhaps from the Audi of Tycho Hardy as they're about to start lap 10.
1/3, well, approaching 1/3 race distance here this afternoon. We'll hit that just as we enter on to lap 12, and we see Tycho Hardy get the move made in towards the opening corner of lap 10. A very simple overtake when all was said and done. Up at the front, though, the front three starting to drag themselves back together once again. Stephen Vasso, Joris Krozen, and Judah Prescan wanting to try and pull each other forward. Julian Klaffenbach as well, not far off the back with Gabor Konstos. Not far as well, making it a 5-car train, separated by just over a second and some change back to Tycho Hardy. Of course, they will be out of the overtake mode and at a little bit of a deficit, shall we say.
Definitely, and I think this strategy battle as well, something that we really need to talk about. Are we going to see the mix between the 1 and the 2 stoppers? Victor Valder with the fastest lap on the previous tour, comfortably quicker than what the leaders are managing on the fresh hard compound tyres for the Audi, currently in P15, but romping along at a rapid rate of knots ahead of the rampaging bull of Alex Santana. This is Elia Tomasetto battling away with Florian Fanzelter. Started from second, Florian, down in position 22, courtesy of a game crash and a disconnection on the opening lap. Only recently got back into the session a couple of laps ago. Bitter pill to swallow for the Scuderia, with Cameron Dowes also in a bit of plight, down in 18th and with a 10-second penalty. The lead group stay out once again. This is the Aston Martin of Lucas Beisner, close behind the 2 Williams. Simon Engel has to go defensive. These guys traded places a couple of laps ago, with Nelson Alves getting the better of Engel. But look at this stern examination. Do we think about it into 2? No, we don't. Just try and keep it hooked tight to the inside. Conrad Bohm, now with the fastest lap of the race, pitted once so far in this race, but Engel under severe pressure.
That he is, the lean green racing machine, wanting to try and get moves made early doors and benefit from their fresh, or still the used set of tyres they're running at the moment. Of course, the top 12 are yet to pit this afternoon. Florian, 10-second penalty for speeding the pit lane, I believe, retires from the session as to be expected. Elia as well, still out there, 10 seconds down on Tom Roberts. I don't think we've seen them get back into the session yet. I might have missed that slightly earlier on if they have done so, but the lap times they're setting aren't anything to be bewildered at here. They're on 1:17s compared to 1:12s and 1:13s, 1:11s up and down the field.
You would expect that's an AI. I'd like to think that's not the true pace of Tomasetto down there in position number 20. Engel's still under the cosh here, but a little bit wide for Beisner through turn 13 over the bumpy ride of the curb on the left-hand side. Just pushes him a little bit further back from Engel, who of course does have the overtake boost mode available, courtesy of being just a half a second off the back of their teammate Nelson Alves, and they're 3 seconds off the back of Tycho Hardy and Jensen Rosen, who are a second and a half off the back of that leading quintet, who continue to pound the lap times out. Prescan, Vaso, Krozen, Klaffenborg and Chonstos. As we look further down, Marcel Paps, P13, has pitted along with Conrad Bohm and Victor Valda, who are setting some very nice lap times at this moment.
That is a reminder on your screens at the moment who has made their opening pit stops from Tomasetto down in 20th. And yeah, I think they're still in AI mode. The laps they're setting nowhere near the benchmark that we would expect to be competing in this at the moment. But everybody else, 13th down to 19th, as we see Tom Roberts and Cameron Dowd scrapping out as they make their way down towards turn 7. And again, a look at the tyres. Marcel Paps now getting the better of Scott Holmes, who is yet to pit off of 11-lap-old medium tyres. Marcel Paps looking like the favourable contender as it stands at the moment. They've managed to really, truly gap the cars behind and now have made their way into the medium runner field.
And into the pits comes Joris Krozen. And 10-second penalties both for Krozen and for Gabor Chonstos. So that's the second and third drivers to make a bit of a blunder coming into the pit lane. That's 2 of the leading 5 contenders potentially thrown out of the fight to try and pick up the race win in the second social race here in the Ventauri Pro Series. They're going to be spat out of the pit lane in a little bit of traffic. Through goes Paps, through goes Bohm and Holmes. There is Victor Valde, who'll be looking to try and get ahead of the Haas. Bit of a snap of oversteer on exit for Joris Krozen. You can see Gabor Chonstos just in the background, but it's going to be the Audi in between these two drivers that have just come out of the pits.
Let's not forget as well, Victor Valde will have warmer tyres, and at least they'll have a little bit more tread on them if they want to try and push in this early stages. Joris would have had to be careful, and you can see how careful they had to be at pit exit just to not spin the tyres up too much on this occasion. But back up at the front, it's still 2 to Prescat from Steven Vasso, from Julian Klaffenbach as well. The front 3 now separated by 2.6 seconds all the way back to Tycho Hardy. And just to update on penalties and warnings, 2 warnings by the name of Conrad Bohm, 1 warning each to Julian Klaffenbach and Tycho Hardy as well. So drivers are slowly succumbing to track limits as well.
Klaffenbach the next to pick up a 10-second penalty, and suddenly we had a quintet fighting for the lead, and 3 of them have picked up 10-second penalties. Nelson Alves gets one as well. Klaffenbach was very late ducking over to the right-hand side to move into the pits. That could explain why they were carrying just a little bit too much speed. Not sure what happened to Nelson Alves, but that is 5 drivers now that have failed to slow down to the appropriate speed limit to make their way down pit road. Nelson Alves is going to come up way down the field in 17th. So it's Prescan and Vaso with a free hit here, effectively, to try and battle exclusively for the race win.
Absolutely. And the question will be, how long can they decide, or can they feel they can go on this set of tyres? Because if they're able to try and hold it, there's no safety car, of course, to effectively nullify having to make a pit under green flag running. All the drivers will have to do that. But can they last it out? Maybe go for tyres at the end, because we're approaching half race distance, which will come in 4 laps time, and you traditionally wouldn't want to take a medium and a hard tyre equal distance due to the nature of the harder tyres doing better over the long runs. But if they're feeling fine, they're obviously willing and able to stay out at this time.
This should be the one-stop versus the two-stop race. The leader of the one-stoppers so far is Marcel Paps, still, I believe, in position number 8. As Hardy and Rosa make their way to the pits, there's another one. Keep chalking them up. 10-second penalty for the Alpine this time, or the Audi, I should say. That is 6 handed out now. So Marcel Paps up to position number 4, about 9 seconds off the back. No, even more than that, 12 seconds, in fact, off the back of the leaders. Which gives Tudor Prescan and Steven Vaso so much flexibility strategy-wise, because Paps, Bohm, Krozen, Konstos, all of them with limiting factors. Paps and Bones will have to stop again. It's going to be 20-plus laps on a set, or nearly 30 laps, I should say, on a set of the hard compound tyres. And Krozen and Chonstos both with 10-second penalties.
Certainly. Lots of them up and down the field. I think they're lucky this is a social race in many aspects. This is the opportunity, and we say it in other leagues, this is the opportunity to get things wrong. Speaking of getting things wrong, Scott Holmes looks to have taken a trip onto the gravel through turns 4. But this is the place, if they're going to make mistakes, make them here. It doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. They have an opportunity where there's no points on offer. It's just a little bit of pride at the end of the day. And we all know drivers inside of F1 Sim Racing, they don't like having their prize knocked, but you've got to do it sometimes.
Sometimes you do have to take a bit of a hit to the ego. As the 2 leaders, 15 laps done on their mediums. That should be 21 to the end on a set of hard compound tyres, barring any major maladies. Bison also into the pit, so that should be Marcel Paps taking the lead. No, it won't, because he's just been blasted past by the Cadillac of Conrad Bohm, who's just been lapping a little bit quicker. They were 3 seconds apart when Bohm came out of the pits 1 lap after Paps. but has managed to claw those 3 seconds back. And now the position also to take over the lead of this race, but with still one stop to make, you would imagine a Tudor Presscan out of the pits, right into the path of his slow teammate, Luca Rapassa here, who's on old tyres.
This is going to be really interesting. Will we see a team game here between Presscan and Rapassa? I don't think we will. Up at the front, Konstas gets the better of Krozen. So up to third is Gabor. Joris demoted to third place, both of them with 10-second penalties, as is Julian Klaffenbach as well in 5th position. So there's going to be a lot of chopping and changing here. Aston Martin, I think, has had a bit of an excursion. Oh my goodness, that's Marcel Paps, who was almost leading at one point. That's a rare mistake to make through turn 10.
Huge blunder, wow. Marcel Paps was potentially in the driver's seat to fight for the 2-stop win along with Conrad Bohm. Had somebody to work with to try and challenge the one-stop strategy for Presscan and Vaso, but has thrown himself out of contention with a bit of a clumsy error there, you would imagine, on the power through turn number 10. And now, caught by the 2 McLarens, Vaso at the back of this group also, as Klaffenbach and Krozen swap places in the 2 Haas cars. 3rd and 4th becomes 4th and 3rd. With Victor Varda just behind. Here comes Presscan down the inside of his teammate. Vaso trying to follow in the footsteps of the now lead Papaya McLaren car. Rapassa looking for the cutback, doesn't quite have the drive on exit. Now Presscan tucked right up underneath the rear wing of the Aston Martin of Paps, who is a little bit wounded here.
He'll be certainly a little bit nervy. Simon Engel, another 10-second penalty and retires from the session, adding our grand total to 3 drivers that have gone for an early shower here at the circuit. Zandvoort, as you were saying, yeah, Presscan right in the back of Paps, who's wanting to be a little bit overcautious, I think, in towards turn 8. Send to move down the inside. That is as simple as they come, I think, at the end of the day.
Really good move, though. Clinical move as well. Not a regulation overtaking point. Vaso to the inside of turn 10. Dives past the Aston Martin as well. Pocket pinched once more for Marcel Paps, who's starting to tumble through the field after that mistake 90 seconds or so ago. Now with Luca Rapassa to deal with, who is on old tyres. Started from the back, Luca Rapassa, who of course won the first social race in Barcelona. Not necessarily in contention here. So it's Conrad Bohm alone out in front. 3 seconds clear of this pair, Gabor Konstas and Julian Klaffenbach. The problem for those 3, if you include Joris Krozen, all of them with 10-second penalties for speeding into the pit lane as Presscan with the fastest lap of the race.
Absolutely, and don't forget 2 warnings to the name of Conrad Bohm, so could potentially pick themselves up a 3-second penalty for multiple track limit violations. They are only halfway through this race at the moment. It does feel like it's flown by in many aspects of the race. We aren't expecting many more pit stops here unless we do see tyres going to the absolute limits. Maybe the likes of Santana, who's already done 10 laps on a set of the hard compounded tyre. We'll get them up on your screen just for reference what we're talking about. Nelson Alves on the back of Tycho Hardy as well as they make their way through turn 9.
All over the back of the, all over the road, I should say, the back of the car. This is Nelson Alves all over the back of Tycho Hardy coming through turn 10. Always saying, come on, get on with it, as they're both boxed in by Marcel Paps and Luca Rapassa. Hardy having to go defensive, moving about in the middle of the circuit to try and keep Alves off the back of the Audi, pushing him again through the apex and the exit of turn number 12. Perhaps with the oldest tyres of the field, joint with Victor Varda, currently in position number 5. Luca Rapassa with 1 lap younger tyres, but Hardy and Alves with much fresher tyres as Klaffenbach to the outside, doesn't even need the braking zone to pass Konstas, and Presscan and Vaso continue their march on forward at the expense of Santana.
Absolutely. It is looking very close up and down this field. Tycho Hardy as well, past Marcel Paps, as you were saying, in towards turn 3. Starting move to get past, and we're just sort of in a reshuffling phase. A lot of drivers just figuring out where they want to be and starting to see what battles they're on. And drivers in the chat, sorry, not drivers in the chat, spectators in the chat. We see Nelson Alves get past Marcel Paps. Show tyres. If you show some manners, then there's a maybe in there.
Melwin Efferman there. Oh, as that's off the road, clattering through the polystyrene board. That's Fabrizio Donoso taking a bumpy ride through the gravel. Lucas Bice is going to lap that one up as well. Looked like side by side with either Tom Roberts or Cameron Dowds. But that is Fabrizio Donoso losing a couple of places there, down to position number 17. Unfortunate stuff there. Bumpy ride.
Certainly so. Let's check the spine after this race concludes, because I guarantee you're feeling a little bit sore and a little bit worse for wear. Through the final corner, we watch on board with Tudor Presscan on the back of Victor Varda towards the first corner, moves towards the inside, the overspeed from that overtake mode and the straight line mode. Easy move made at the end of the day. Stephen Vaso wants to try and follow through as well, gets the move done, and that is simply spectacular. Both Tudor and Stephen following one another through. Just if you are as well just tuning in for the first time, ignore that the rear and front wings are not opening. I promise the drivers are using straight mode. It's an EA doing an EA thing.
Not for the first time, and most likely not for the last time. As Nelson Alves, the latest to relegate Alex Santana down a further spot. Luca Rapassa right in the thick of the battle as well. And then Marcel Paps, who at one stage was leading this race, but 5 or so laps ago, now down in position 12 with some very wounded tyres after a whoopsie coming through either turn 9 or turn 10. We picked Marcel Paps up midway through the gravel traps at turn number 10. So a big mistake somewhere, which is throwing them out of contention to try and pick up the race lead and the race victory. Meanwhile, the Cadillac he was fighting with, Conrad Bohm, has now been reeled in by the Haas of Julian Klaffenborg, and for the first time in a little while, this could be the lead changing hands into Tarzan.
The overtake, the slipstream and everything going in the favour of Julian Klaffenborg. Looked to the inside and had to retreat very quickly to the outside, as it was Bohm that went defensive. He might have opened up the opportunity into 2 and 3. He'll have a look down 2. Outside will tend itself for 3, but the banked curve gives that opportunity to try and go round the outside. Does go round the outside, and Julian Klaffenborg, stellar move to take the race lead away.
Superbly done. Bohm, almost the master of their own downfall there, was slightly deep on the defensive into Tarzan, gave Klaffenborg the smallest of opportunities and the smallest of footholds in the battle to get alongside, have the inside for 2, run Bohm slightly tight into turn 3, and then power around the outside of the banking. Expertly done, as the Haas, for the first time, now leads this race, albeit with a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, still looming over their head, as Conrad Bohm's tyres looking decidedly second best here. Big slide out of turn 10, and suddenly under the microscope once more, this time with a Mercedes on the back of them.
Absolutely, and I wonder if this is maybe the tyres starting to fall away quicker than expected. 13 laps is all Conrad Bohm has done on a set of hard compound tyres compared to the 8s and the 9s around him. It's Julian Klaffenborg on 8 at 9 for both Konstos and Krozen as they make their way out to turn 14 to start on to lap 22 of 36. 15 to go. Sends to the inside, does Konstos. Beautiful move. Can he get the car stopped though? Probably not in enough time. Bohm just had an angle to try and come back at him, but couldn't the first time of asking, and will have to retreat as more drivers now into pit road. Victor Valda, Marcel Paps and Alex Santana. All of those drivers opting for a fresh set of hard compound tyres to the end.
And the pressure still. Conrad Bohm getting it non-stop. Joris Krozen the next on the scene to try and push the Cadillac down a further spot. Surely will be into the pits at the end of this lap. The problem is the guys they're racing only 2 seconds back down the road to the inside of turn number 9. Throws it to the inside to Joris Krozen. Not a lot of space left for Bohm on the outside, who has to wave the white flag and gets bumped out of the podium places with Prescan and Vaso catching at a rate of knots. And this 2-stop strategy for Bohm has got them some decent track position. Lost out to the 3 drivers in front that have got 10-second penalties and needs to try and be a little bit decisive here. Do you pull the trigger and jump into the pit lane for the final time?
I think if you're going to do it, you've got to do it on this occasion. Taking his previous set of tyres 14 laps, he'll have to take the next one 13, unless he's looking maybe for a second set of the mediums, but keeps out for the time being, as he still is on the back of the front 3. Maybe he feels the 10-second penalties could actually just help his race. For the most part anyway, we'll have to wait and see as we close down on 10 to go. Battles happening further afield. Lucas Rapassa into the pits for their second stop of the afternoon, off of a set of the hard tyres they took 14 laps ago, and a fresh set going on.
Interesting strategy unfolding in front of us. Judah Prescan pretty much there now in relation to Conrad Bohm, who's trying to get dragged along here by Klaffenborg, Konstos and Krozen. Your top 3, all of them still need to stop again, you would imagine, as that is a 10-second penalty again. This
that's
time,
a new one.
For crossing the white line. I haven't seen that, especially because I'm pretty sure you could just straight line it a lot of the time on this game.
I was under the impression you could. I don't think I've ever seen a 10-second penalty handed out for crossing the pit exit line.
Luca Rapassa, winner of Social Race number 1, down in P17 in Social Race 2. Started from the back of the pack to give themselves a bit of an adventure, and it certainly has been an adventure for the McLaren driver. They could be bookending this race with Tudor Prescant, your net race leader, going to the end on the 1-stop. Definitely. Conrad Bohm just in front, half a second separating them, and now the Cadillac peels off into the pits.
Had to pull the trigger at this time of asking, and they've got the split decision. They can either go for a fresh set of mediums, they can either go for a fresh set of hards. A lot of it will be dependent on what they have left in their roster, and that is a fresh set of hard compound tyres going on to the American-based team as the front right wheel jack has been run over by his own driver, peeling out of his pit box.
Victor Varda again on the 2-stop, did have the fastest lap, handed over to Marcel Paps on a 1:11.1. The problem for the Aston Martin driver is he's down in P17, and if he's going to recover a good result, got a hell of a lot of overtaking to try and work through. Klaffenbach, Johnstos, Kroos, and still the top three from Presekant and Varza, your net race leaders as things stand. The top three holding those 10-second penalties. Tycho Hardy, I should say, a further 2.5 seconds back down the road with Nelson Alves, who's been getting stuck in for the majority of this race. Then Jensen Rosen, Lucas Beisner, and Fabrizio Donoso, your top 10 as things stand. We have got a mix of strategies, some going for the 1-stop, some going for the 2, and it might leave a chase right at the end as Conrad Bohm spotted the smallest of gaps to the outside, to the right-hand side of Cameron Dowds. Couldn't force the issue through turn 10, and isn't close enough into 11 either. Maybe trying the cutback, got much fresher tyres than the Ferrari.
He can't afford to get held up here. He knows every driver behind him at the moment also has a fresh compound of tyres on. Here's the front runner in terms of new tyre runners, and we'll look to the outside of 14, trying to use the banking, but it's not quite as effective as the run through 3. But down towards the first corner of Tarzan, will use the slipstream and looks to the outside now of the opening corner. A little bit of contact. The Ferrari doesn't want to give up too much space. He's pushed onto the runoff zone, and he's trying still to go side by side. In front of him, Tom Roberts, causing and playing blocker. The inside of 310's itself. Move made at the second time of asking. Contact between themselves and Robert, both into the Armco barriers. Damage for both cars as my game absolutely shoots itself in terms of frame rate, and that is a lot of damage on these cars.
Bohm collected somebody else. I think it might have been Tomasetto, the lapped Red Bull. Both Red Bull cars were in there. Santana may be lucky to avoid that one. But an absolute nightmare there. Roberts and Bohm tripping over one another. Santana with a 10-second penalty for ignoring yellow flags. Roberts with significant damage after being plunged into the Armco in the contact between themselves and Bohm. That is a chance at a possible podium for Conrad Bohm, thrown into a Dutch bin.
That is horrendous. Not the way they'd like to see this race go out. I wouldn't be surprised if we now have a considerable number of retirements later when they manage to make it way round. We're approaching 10 to go here at this moment in time, which was going to set itself up for a thrilling race end. Luca Rapassa does get the better of Cameron Dowds as well, down towards the first corner, and there's a great extra bit of straight line speed on board of that Papaya McLaren by the looks of things.
So 11 laps to go. Tom Roberts back into the pits, locks up, crossed up, 10-second penalty, probably a rage quit as well. As Marcel Paps gives this one up in P16, that will become P19. Tom Roberts still looks to be pressing on with this one, so respect for the resilience despite the problems and the trials and tribulations that have befallen the Racing Bulls driver. Conrad Bohm, 10-second penalty, that will surely and is be our 5th retirement of the race. Was at one stage looking very promising for Conrad Bohm, but alas, no more. Elia Tomasetto, still don't think back in the session.
No.
About a lap down, a lap and a half down potentially at this stage.
I think they are, but, you know, you say never quit, and the AI does never quit, so they are going to gain at least up to 17th place, should it be more, if more drivers decide to resign. Not that they'll ever be awarded that place. Let me just clarify that as well. Of course, if they are under AI, they are not classed as completing the race. But up at the front, it's still Julian Klaffenbach that is running away with this, but Tudor Prescan is on prime position to take the win here.
Definitely in the driver's seat, the box seat for Tudor Prescan. Got to be careful with Steven Varzo still there. Klaffenbach, Johnstos and Krozen did pit a few laps earlier than Prescan and Varzo, who stopped together. So both of them, the McLaren and the Alpine, on the same aged rubber. 3 seconds back. Still Tycho Hardy with a penalty. 10 seconds for speeding in the pits. Nelson Alves also with a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pits. That will elevate Jensen Rosen and Lucas Beisner. And that's where maybe Conrad Bohm needed to have a little bit more patience there. Was going to inherit a whole load of positions courtesy of the 10-second penalties that were being handed out left, right and centre like they were going out of fashion for speeding in the pit lane.
Certainly so. We saw Cameron Dowds into the pits as well. That's going to be a fresh set of hard compound tyres to see him through the last 9 or so laps of racing. And there we go. Again, another penalty for crossing the pit exit. This is going to be an interesting one to discuss, I think, as we head into the league racing seasons here, Tom. Because obviously we do PSGL and everything else that comes along with it. I don't remember ever seeing drivers get at least twice in one race penalties like this.
I've only ever seen it 5 seconds, and normally it's just a warning as well, as Tom Roberts given the cold shoulder through turn 6 and up to 7. Luca Rapassa with a 10-second penalty and a retirement, so from hero to zero. Winner of Social Race 1 doesn't see the checkered flag of Social Race 2. That'll be the McLaren dropping out of that one. Good move there from Cameron Dowds, eventually muscling past Tom Roberts. But Julian Klaffenbach has managed to just stretch their legs a little bit over Gabor Chonstos, who looks to be struggling for a little bit of pace in second position. Joris Krozen third, 10-second penalty also. Then Pressakan, then Varzo.
Well, Gibson makes a good point. You can't cut the pit lane in PSGL, but equally, I would have expected to see it to a certain degree.
A bit of contact there.
Yeah.
Sorry to jump in. That was Pressakan into the back of Krozen, who looked like they got out of shape through 11 and 12. And that almost gave the Haas a helping hand into the wall that was on the left-hand side. Suddenly, under the caution, under the microscope here, because Pressakan tucked right into the slipstream, a bit of battery, potentially to hand this third place over. Krozen goes defensive. Pressakan doesn't fancy it to the outside, slams into the back of the Haas, bit of a bump and run, creates the space to the right-hand side. Little bit of a push to pass, but Pressakan won't care about it, up to P3.
Absolutely that. We've got a Ferrari off, and I think that's going to be one of the stranded cars. That Cameron Dowds is moving out of the way of everybody else. It is. I think there was also Elias' car just along with them. We saw yellow flags very briefly as another car comes swooping past them. Tom Roberts well and truly in the mud, but up at the front, the battle was hotting up. Steven Vaso looking left, looking right to try and get past Joris Krozen. Sends a move down the inside through turns 8 and turns 9. Goes deep though, allows Joris to maybe try and come back at them. Can't on this occasion. And through goes Vaso up into net P2.
Good driving from both. Clinical from Vaso. Effectively has to shadow Tudor Pressakan in this battle, who's now applying the blowtorch to Gabor Chonstos. Klaffenbach already nearly 3 seconds up the road now, gained a second in the previous tour, as under significant pressure once more. The Mercedes, this time not from a Haas, this time from a McLaren and an Alpine. And no overtake boost mode for Chonstos down the main straight could spell trouble. 10-second penalty looming over their head. Penalties for others will help his cause. Into the middle of the circuit we go. Defensive into Tarzan. Little bit late under brakes. Pressakan spots the space to the inside. Can't quite get the overlap on the run into turn 2.
Trying to play the patient game, I think, here is Tudor Pressakan. Knows that he doesn't have to try and make the move on circuit. Of course, both 10-second penalties will be applied to both Klaffenbach and Chonstos as the end. Well, when race ends, Steven Vaso will be their biggest threats here as they make their way through turn 7 and turns 8. The Alpine well and truly on the heels of the Papaya McLaren at the moment. Through turn 8 they go. Opportune moment to try and send a move down the inside of the left-hander as it opens itself up, but Vaso now has the advantage of playing the patient game as well. It's switched from being Pressakan that can be patient to now Vaso that can be patient here. He's got 6 laps and a little bit extra to make this move. He doesn't need to worry.
Just got to try and work one over. Try and sense where Pressakan might get a little bit impatient. Looks like these drivers that pitted 3 or 4 laps before Pressakan and Vaso are going to be going to the end. So it'll be 23, 4, maybe even 5 laps on their set of hard compound tyres by the time we reach lap 36. Pressakan and Vaso pitted on lap 15, let's not forget. Chonstos goes defensive. Pressakan this time closer than he was on the previous tour. Throws it around the outside. Will he be given the time of day on the left-hand side through turn 1? Squeezed onto the curb. Not given the space, and suddenly from attack to defence, Pressakan had to chop across to protect third place from Vaso.
Absolutely. Still Vaso wanting to try and hold firm and hold steady. Pressakan would have wanted that move on Chonstos to put a car between themselves and Vaso, but couldn't quite find the time of day through the opening section of corners. And again, the McLaren will have to try and do everything they can to get past the Mercedes outfit. In front of them through turn 8 they go again for the 31st time this race so far. Chonstos with a little bit of breathing room, but not enough to feel comfortable, as Klaffenbach is secretly making a charge to the line. They were faster last time around by 7/10 of a second, which might just be enough to clutch them, potentially a race win if this battle continues to hot up like it is.
Great run for Pressakan coming out of turn 10. Had a little look to the inside of 11, thought better of it. Opting once again just to sit and watch and wait behind the Mercedes, pushing him through the penultimate corner, saying come on, get on with it, got a race to try and win here. Steven Vaso very much in the thick of the battle as well. Deja vu from lap 31 as we start lap 32. Pressakan ducking and weaving all over the place. Chonstos defensive for the 3rd lap running again. We have to go the long way around again. There's a little bit of contact again. Pressakan giving the cold shoulder, enables Vaso to duck to the inside, dive down the inside of turn number 2. Chonstos elbows out, daggers on the elbows of the Mercedes, holding on for dear life despite the 10-second penalty, and Pressakan now finding himself with a car between his main rival, and it's not the way round he wanted.
It's the opposite effect of what he would have wanted. Looks to the outside of 7. Can't quite make it stretch, but Joris Krozen now well and truly on the scene. Sends it late into 8. Forces off Gabor Konstas. And I think that's a little bit of revenge for what we've seen in the opening few corners. The McLaren well and truly getting their elbows out. Through goes Hardy as well to make their way up to 5th place. Gabor will not be happy with what they've just seen there.
Punch and counter punch, quite literally there between Presecan and Chonstos as I punch my microphone in excitement as we go into the final 5 laps of this race with Klaffenborg 5 seconds up the road, but with a 10-second penalty, could still be looking at P3. Jensen Rosen's the driver we need to try and keep an eye on, and that gap between the Haas and the Racing Bull is around about 10 seconds, trying to do some quick maths there on the numbers being added up. Here comes Krozen. Prescan has to go defensive, turns in slightly early. Krozen flicks the wheel in to try and crank on the steering lock and get the car to rotate and bite through Tarzan. And under pressure once again is Tudor Prescan, but still with an opportunity to win this race despite the argy-bargy with Gabor Chonstos on the previous lap.
Absolutely, Dan. It's still looking very close. We're on lap 33 of 36. We'll have 3 to go. Next time they cross the line, it is still Vaso in that position to look to take the race win. Last time around, Klaffenbach only quicker by just over 0.2 of a second as Cameron Dowd leaves the session after their earlier retirement. They will be seeing the back end of this session, and Vaso still on course, as we were saying, to claim victory here in the Netherlands in Social Race 2 for the Ventauri Pro Series.
Venturi Pro Series. Second social race, like you said, season kicking off on the 14th of July in around about just under a fortnight's time, or exactly a fortnight's time, I should say, because it's the 30th of June. There aren't 31 days in this month. Presecan through 14. Vaso second on the road, net race leader with a penalty for Julian Klaffenborg of 10 seconds. Will it change hands once again? Presecan has led the majority of this race to the inside of Tarzan. Vaso gives the space. Very, very helpful there with the space. He was a little bit kind there for Presecan, who couldn't quite find the overlap, wasn't brave enough under brakes. And we remain as we were with Vaso ahead of Presecan.
Absolutely looking impressive as it still stands, and I think just waiting and playing the patient game, they know they've got past the likes of the drivers that have got those penalties still hanging over those heads. And yes, just for confirmation, all of those in the top 7 that have got penalties next to their name, they are the full 10 seconds worth of penalties. So it is just the front 2 here of Vaso and Prescan that are essentially going to battle it out for the race win. It is no one else that can get involved necessarily. So we see a double move there. Valda gets past Donoso. Beisener gets past Rosen as well.
Is an exclusive battle with 2.5 laps remaining. Steven Vaso, the pole sitter, let's not forget, but has played second fiddle, has sat behind Tudor Prescan for the majority of this race. Little bit of contact through turn 12 as the Alpine gets all loosey-goosey with the loud pedal. They've dropped Joris Krozen to the tune of 0.8 of a second. Got Tycho Hardy to deal with. That is for position as well. Could be P4 potentially. We'll have to wait and see when penalties are applied. The McLaren into the slipstream. Battery being used. Straight line mode activated. Long way round again. Can't get to the inside of turn 1. Tries the cutback. A little bit of contact once more between the two Mercedes engine customers. A wobble on the exit of 1. Puts Prescan on the back foot once again.
Lap and a half then to go in this race. I think Vaso has got to try and come up with something if they want to try and hold on to this win, because Prescan will be doing everything they can to charge the battery. I say that as they deploy in towards turn 7. Try sweeping around the outside. Contact between themselves and Vaso. Vaso at a 90-degree angle, and surely that is race gone for the Alpine.
Well, controversial moment as we go on to the penultimate lap. Tried it the long way around, all the way around the outside of the fast turn number 7. And whether it was Prescan turning in or whether it was Vaso just understeering into the McLaren, only the replays will show, which we don't have and we're not going to run right now. Vaso still with a chance, but with just over a lap to go, needs an absolute miracle here going on to the 36th lap of the Dutch Grand Prix. With Klaffenborg out in front, has got the strategy spot on, has been very consistent in this second stint. 5.5 seconds clear of Presecan, who will take this, barring any major maladies, on the last lap.
As long as my maths is correct, I believe Vaso will still take second place, but will feel slightly objectified that they would have wanted to go for, or at least have an opportunity to try and attack for first place on circuit. Lucas Beisener, I don't think close enough on this occasion to try and challenge for the podium, although it will be close. I think when all is said and done, up and down the field, we will await that in just over half a lap's time. But we have to say congratulations to Klaffenbach. Aside from that speeding the pit lane penalty. They've driven an outstanding race here today and really shown at what pace they can produce.
Lonely second half of the race, really. Once he managed to deal with Chonstos and deal with Crozen, drop them out of that 1 second window, hasn't looked back, has been able to avoid all of the drama and the conflict going on behind. Little bit deep there into the chicane of turns 11 and 12, pushing hard because a podium still very much a possibility. Beisner and Rosen will be the drivers that Klaffenborg will be looking at. 10-second penalty or not, it's been a superb drive from the lead. Haas car will cross the line to take the victory on track. But we go back now to the papaya McLaren of Tudor Pressakan. An almighty bare-knuckle brawl with Vaza, but it's Pressakan that takes the victory, wins the Dutch duel here at Zandvoort. Chonstos penalties, all of them handed out. Vaza does take second ahead of Klaffenborg, Kroos and Hardy, Chonstos and Alves. Beisner up to fourth with Rosen, so Klaffenborg does, by 5 seconds as well, comfortable margin, finish on the podium. Wilder in P6, Kroos and Hardy, Fabrizio Donoso and Gabor Chonstos, your top 10 finishers. But it's Tudor Pressakan powering on, marching onwards in that McLaren.
Nelson Alves leads the session early, so we'll drop down the order annoyingly on our complete order. So Scott Holmes will be classified in 12th, Alex Santana almost certainly in 13th, Elia Tomasetto, who we still believe was not back in the session, so will not be classified. But a race, I think, to remember and a race to forget for different reasons for many of our drivers here this afternoon after, well, a very chopping and changing race.
Interesting strategical games going on, but once again, McLaren do the double in the first 2 social races. Luca Rapassa in Barcelona and Tudor Pressakan in Zandvoort. The irony of McLaren winning in Max Verstappen territory with all that's been going on in the recent few days in the rumour mill in IRL F1. Good drive from Steven Vaza, the pole sitter, unable to convert it, but was feisty in there and put on a great show. With Julian Klaffenborg, finished 9th last time out in Barcelona after qualifying 11th. Taking a very well-deserved podium. Could have been more, though, without the penalty.
Certainly could have been. And what could have been, I think, is that the question that was going to be asked. But Tudor Pressakan, of course, your race winner. Fastest lap going to Alex Santana. Fabrizio Donoso, your driver of the day. Most overtakes Victor Valda. And Jensen Rosen as your cleanest driver in terms of accolades. We've run through your complete order. We did that as they crossed the line. But you can see all the penalties being stacked up there. And the grand total list of DNFs all the way up to 15th place, which is a insane number of drivers that did not make it until the end here.
Funnily enough, exactly the same number as we had 2 weeks ago. So a little bit of a symmetry going on there, but really exciting race. Some great battles going on throughout the field. Really good duel there between Varzo and between Pressakan for the majority of that race. And once again, setting things up nicely. We've got a few rivalries potentially beginning to form as well. Didn't see the best of certain drivers. Luca Rapassa starting from the back basically got embroiled in collisions left, right and centre. But a few maybe just starting to stake a claim as we head towards season start.
I think you're right. Lots to look forward to. Lots to try and keep an eye on. And as you said, the fierce battles, the fierce rivalries that we really had in those opening social race, not just this one, the one we had a couple of weeks ago, all to really look out for. We don't appear to have any drivers in for a chat either, which is quite nice. We can, I think we can wrap up here.
Absolutely. And if you want more, well, there's going to be more very, very soon. If we bring the calendar back up just to show you when things are going to start, I've caught TK out on the spot there. 14th of July, 2 weeks' time, we will be heading to Albert Park, Australia. And then a week after that, it'll be China. A 4-race run to start things off, ending in Silverstone and the Red Bull Ring for the Austrian Grand Prix. 4 very interesting circuits, 4 very different circuits to start things off as well.
Absolutely. Really ones to look out for. We then head for a triple header. Belgium, Japan, Bahrain, not in that order. I don't know why I've written them in the wrong, or read them in the wrong order. That's a bit of a bizarre one. And of course, Texas being the second end of the second quartet, essentially, for heading into the final 4, which is going to be fantastic.
Really great run to end the season. Saudi Arabia, Mexico City, Interlagos and Abu Dhabi, taking us all the way until the middle of October, the back end of 2026. But TK, lovely for Tom Squared to infiltrate this this series for the first time. People already know this, but where can they find you on an internet? See what you're up to.
Pretty much add everything. They call me TK, sometimes Twitch, sometimes with an underscore in front of it, because I'm difficult like that, and some people have chosen the name before I can. So, how about yourself? Where can they check you out on an interweb near them?
They take it before you. Wilco.com's on Instagram. Make sure you check out Ventauri socials as well that are, I believe, linked in the description of this live stream. But it has been, once again, a pleasure to bring this social race to you. The main season will be kicking off in 2 weeks' time, down under in Albert Park. And we do have some storylines already starting to be written as we wait for that first full chapter to see pen hit the paper in a fortnight's time. Thank you ever so much for watching, and we will see you in a couple of weeks for round 1.